Continue with the aorist tense, but we have passives for the aorist, first aorist, and for the future. Now the passives are going to be different in form. We've had our vocabulary. Now let's look at this. I've always really enjoyed the passive voice when it comes to the matter of the aorist, because there's a very, very simple little key in remembering the matter of the passive. When it comes to the first aorist, when it comes to the future, you're always going to have a theta eta. That's what you're going to have. Now then, when it comes to the second aorist passive, you don't have the theta. All right, now let's look at it. The stem of the first aorist passive is formed by adding theta epsilon directly to the verb stem. Thus, lutha is the first aorist stem of luo. Now then, he's going to show you what takes place here just a little bit. But the first aorist passive indicative of luo is eluthane, eluthase, eluthe, eluthamen, eluthati, eluthason. First aorist passive infinitive is luthane I. Now then, before we go any further, notice the definition. I was loosed. You were loosed. He was loosed. We were loosed. You were loosed. They were loosed. To be loosed. What do you see there? What do you see there? When you have that definition given for each one of these. Just
past and complete.
Well, yes, but what do you mean by past?
It's past. It's something that happened to you in past time, or happened to someone in past time.
It's completed action.
Completed action by the tense. All right, now then, let's look. The subject. The subject. I was loosed. You were loosed. He was loosed. We were loosed. You were loosed. They were loosed. The subject gets all the action, isn't that right? The subject does not do any acting. Now in the active voice, the subject does the action. In the middle voice, the subject acts upon himself. But in the passive voice, the subject is acted upon. One very, very important truth you must always remember with the passive voice. Passive voice, passive voice, passive voice. Voice is different than mode. Passive voice shows the subject is acted upon. Now that's going to be true. I don't care whether you have a finite verb, whether you have an infinitive, or whether you have a participle. When you have a passive voice, you are talking about something or the subject being acted upon. Now then, you rightfully observed that since it is aorist, it is an act in the past. I was loosed. Looking at something in the past, okay? Now then, observe. We take a little time here. The vowel epsilon of the aorist passive tense suffix theta epsilon is lengthened to eta throughout the indicative and in the infinitive. Why? Well, doesn't give us the reason why. But one of the signs of the aorist, first aorist, was sigma. Isn't that right? You don't have any sigma here at all. There isn't any sigma at all. Now, I can't give you the reason because I simply don't know the reason. But I'd like to give a hunch out that because there's a sigma involved, and you know what takes place when you have a word that ends with an epsilon and so forth, well, they're lengthened, aren't they? But be that as it may, just remember that as far as the stem is concerned, it's not, the stem may be the theta epsilon, but the epsilon is lengthened to eta. So you have thame, thes, the, thamen, theti, theson. And please note, it takes an augment, doesn't it? Personal endings of the aorist passive indicative are secondary personal endings. You remember those. The endings are added directly to the aorist passive stem. In the indicative, there's an augment, as in the aorist indicative. It's formed on the same principles as in the imperfect. The aorist passive infinitive ending is nigh. The accent of the aorist passive infinitive is always on the P note. So, again, as far as the passive verb is concerned, the first aorist, it has the theta eta with the augment. All right? Now then, the aorist passive subjunctive. The aorist passive subjunctive is what you have already learned. Please notice you have the subjunctive endings OS, A, omen, AT, OC. That follows the theta. Don't you forget those two iota subscripts, eh? Tho, thes, they. All right, now then, he says just simply, always remember that when it comes to the subjunctive mode, you do not have the augment. Now then, he says, review the kind of action. Well, you know what kind of action is, octane sart, punctiliar action. 342. For the meaning of the passive voice, go back and look the things over. Some defective verbs have no aorist middle, but passive form, but not the passive meaning. The meaning is either middle or active or intransitive. Now, for instance, paruomai, I go, is eparuthein, I went. Some verbs have both aorist middle and passive forms. And he gives you an example. Now, you're going to say, well, how am I going to really remember this? One thing will help you is that when it comes to the deponent verbs, there's some odd things that take place, right? And so he has suggested that for you. Now, verbs with stems ending in the short vowel generally lengthen the vowel of the stem before the tense suffix theta is formed of the aorist passive. Now he's going to give you a first aorist passive of poi, e-o. Now notice what takes place. E, poi, e, thein. E, poi, e, thein. All right? Gena-o, the aorist passive is e, gene, thein. Now then, phane-ra-o, aorist passive is e, phane, ro, thein. Okay? You got that? You see, the epsilon, the alpha, and the omicron all lengthen according to the rule of the contract. And then, of course, he always throws you an odd one in there. A few verbs like teleo do not lengthen epsilon, but have sigma before the theta as e, teles, thein. You'll get onto that. Now the future passive, talking about another tense now, talking about the future tense, the future passive. Now then, the future passive is made up on the aorist passive stem. Now you may have recalled that I've stated in days past that sometimes the future is built on an aorist stem. Well, here's the case when it comes to the aorist passive. Thus, Luthesomai, I shall be loosed, is the aorist passive stem luthe plus sigma omicron, the future tense suffix and the thematic vowel, plus the omai, the primary middle endings. The future passive of luo is luthesomai, luthese, luthesetai, luthesamatha, lutheseste, luthesantai. Okay? Notice where you have the sigma. And you have the sigma with each one of the middle primary endings. Okay? Observe that the future passive is conjugated like the future middle, except the stem of the passive is luthese, whereas the stem of the middle is loose. In some verbs having no first aorist passive, there is found a second aorist passive with the suffix eta added directly to the verb stem. The conjugation is like that of the first aorist passive, except there is no theta. Now we're talking about second aorist. He's talking about first aorist indicative. He's talking about passive indicative. He's talking about the first aorist subjunctive passive. He's talking about the future passive. Now then he's talking about the second aorist. The second aorist does not have a theta. Thus the second aorist passive of grapho is agraphane. Now then, has exactly the same meaning if you're going to work it out. Agraphase and so forth. The second aorist of strepho is estraphane. The second aorist passive infinitive is graphenai. You see what you're lacking? You are lacking the theta, aren't you? That's what you're lacking. The second future passive is built on the second aorist stem. So you've got here now a second future introduced. And I believe this is the first time you've been introduced to a second future. The second future passive of fine O, second aorist passive, is ephane. The second aorist passive is ephane, but the second future passive is phanesomai. No theta. No theta. All right? Now then, there are your exercises. Paragraph 346 and your vocabulary of lesson number 41. Okay? Now then we will have, for tomorrow, I will be giving you an exam over the last 5 lessons. Lesson number 36 through lesson number 40. Okay? Now that's a pretty good little exercise, and it'll follow the same format as we had before. We'll be giving you vocabulary, probably giving you a declension or a conjugation, ask for parsing, as well as some rather heavy translation. So get your exercises down pat. And we've gone over the exercises, and now I'll either make up sentences or I'll combine sentences. I'll give you an exercise in translation. Probably give you two sentences to translate. All right, we'll call that quits for today then, boys. because at this point I think it's time for us to begin to get into 1 John by way of translation. And we're going to be making some assignments, but I'd like for you to get familiarized with the lexicon and the Greek Testament. So take your Greek Testament, if you will. Now, as I was just mentioning to Luke, we will use the Nestle's text for our classes. If you do want to get a Textus Receptus just to compare, which is perfectly all right with me. Now, I have a Textus Receptus here that I got some time ago, and I use it quite often just to compare with reference to text. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But in order for us to have the uniformity by way of our class, we will stick with the Nestle's text, because all of our work is, by virtue of our grammars and so forth, are built around this particular text. Now, take your Greek New Testament and turn to 1 John. Now, 1 John, I'm not sure what page it would be on in the particular edition that you have. Yours has been torn out there, the first, well, that's an old one that has been here in the library for some time. And so possibly the first page is out. Now, is that one there? Is that a Nestle's too, or can you tell? What does it say?
Westcott and Hort.
Yeah, that would be it. That'll be the text. Now, I think that is going to be a pretty hard text to read, though, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's pretty good.
Not too bad?
Yeah.
Now then, I have 1 John beginning on page 598 as far as my edition is concerned. Now, 1 John is called Iwanu A. Iwanu A. Do you see that? Iwanu A. Have you found that? That is what you call 1 John. Now, when you look at the text, as far as your Greek New Testament is concerned, you're going to note that there is a bit of difference with reference to the type that you have in your in your first year grammar and the Greek text itself. There's a little different kind of print, and sometimes that print is going to blur, especially when it comes to the matter of your iota subscript and your breathing marks with the circumflex. Sometimes it's a little bit blurred. However, as you go along, you're going to get used to being able to see these things, and it won't be a great deal of difficulty for you. Now, when it comes to certain letters, let me see if I can find one. No, that's all right. There are certain letters. I was thinking it was the theta, but no. You'll see the theta is almost an uppercase letter, don't you, as far as your text is concerned. And I was thinking that possibly that would be a smaller case, but that is not the situation before us. Now, your smaller editions, which you have, sometimes may be a little difficult for you to read. I personally like this particular text. That particular text is a large print type Bible for me, and I found it not so difficult by way of study as I do the small one. However, I always carry the little small Greek Testament with me when I go ministering, or if I minister from the pulpit, because this is such a cumbersome book to carry along, and it's heavy, Of course, if you're flying, such a matters that way, all that's weight. So, but yet I do like this very, very much, and the text seems to be very clear. Now, in this particular chapter, you are introduced to certain words that you haven't had just yet. For instance, akeka'amen. Now you haven't had that tense yet. That happens to be a perfect tense. You haven't had that yet. Now you're going to have just a little bit of difficulty in finding some of these words. But what would you, just by looking at that word, could you tell what kind of a word you would look up if you didn't know the meaning? Could you look at that? Just look at that word there. You're lost?
No, it's just not there.
It's
the
not.
whole book.
Huh?
The whole book's just not there.
First
That's
John.
all right, yeah.
First John isn't
Yeah.
there in that text.
All
Let me see
three.
that thing.
All three of them are gone.
Jumps
I've got
right
one
as-
on my desk downstairs, another one.
That's all right.
If you want to follow along.
I got one at home. I just
Just go down and grab Vicky's, just run down and grab hers.
What, did somebody jerk it out, or?
I don't know. Isn't that something? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts,
Must have fell out.
James, 1st, 2nd Peter, Jude, Romans. Wait a minute.
upside down.
Where's the print? Romans.
Galatians, Ephesians.
Oh. Must have been a reject
Hold it
on
here.
sale.
Hold it here. It has a different order.
Right.
Here you are.
Chronological.
It has a different order. No, it's put in an order by virtue of the different kinds of literature.
Oh,
The pastoral epistles, for instance, then the Pauline epistles, and you have your and there you have that's 1st John there now, and that would be with the pastoral epistles. 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st and 2nd, 3rd John, and Jude, James, excuse me, there's James and so forth. That would be your pastoral epistles or general epistles, and that's the order of that particular Greek New Testament. Now, here in 1st John, that particular word, do you have any idea what kind of a word you're looking for? What would be the basic word?
Which one?
ah, cool.
Cool. Yeah. Could you see that, Wes? See, akeka'amen. See, that's from akuo. All right. Do you have any idea what the next word is there, following your relative? Heorakamen. You got any idea what that word is that you would look up if you didn't know the meaning?
Hirao.
Horao. Horao. That happens to be the perfect of horao. Now then, you won't have any difficulty. With, let's see, let me find. You have that horao coming in verse 2. And in verse 3.
That's pretty good for the 4 verses.
And then your last participle in verse 4, peplero mene. You haven't had that. That happens to be a perfect participle, eh? So there's only about 4 words there that you have not had as yet in your study of the New Testament grammar. Now then, let's just, for the fun of things, let's take a look at this particular first sentence here, just to find a word that possibly we need to look up by way of use of the lexicon. Now, you're well aware of what that particular word is, aren't you? That is a relative pronoun. All right, now what is aim? What is aim?
It's Amy. It's an imperfect.
It's the imperfect of Amy, isn't it? You recognize that. That's an imperfect. Now suppose you didn't know the meaning of that aim. Where would you find it? Well, you're not going to find aim in your lexicon. Take your lexicons now. Take your lexicon and just for the fun of it, see if you can find aim. So, you know your lexicon is your Greek dictionary, isn't it? Now then, let's just see if we can find aim. So we come with our epsilon, zeta, eta. Aim. Now go down the line there and see if you can find a word by the name of aim.
Enika?
Hey?
Enika?
Yeah, well, that's not aim, is
No,
it?
but I mean that's as close as you can get.
That would be the closest you could possibly find. And you don't find it, do you? All right, now then, this illustrates the point. You cannot find ain in your lexicon. Therefore, what would you find if you were going to look up and find out what the word ain means? All right, you would have to go every verb. Now listen to me. Every single verb listed in your Greek dictionary or Greek lexicon will appear under the first person singular and the present tense. First person singular, present. Okay? That's the only way you'll ever find a verb. Therefore, if a verb is an imperfect, you have to know how that present is formed to make it imperfect. If the word in your text is aorist, you're not going to find it in an aorist form in your lexicon. If it's a perfect, you're not going to find it in a perfect, and so forth. So you then come back and since you do know that that is an imperfect of Amy, and just for the sake of illustration and practice, suppose you didn't know what the meaning of Amy was. All right? Take your lexicon and look up Amy. And as far as this lexicon is concerned, it's found on page 132. There's your Amy, isn't it? There's your Amy. All right, now then, he gives you a whole flock of meanings for Amy. Well, you and I have learned that this is the verb to be, I am. Isn't that right? Well, it just has all kinds of meanings. Therefore, at the beginning, when you're trying to learn how to translate, all right, you will use the basic meaning for the word. First person singular of Amy is I am, isn't that right? You are, he is, we are, you are, they are. All right, now then, look at your text now, your Greek text again, and observe what was. See? What was. What was. Now then, what is your next word? What is your next word?
Apple.
It's from appa, isn't it? But it is a shortened form, isn't it? Now we have learned in our first year grammar that sometimes something happens to a preposition, doesn't it? When it is associated with another word that begins with a vowel. And that is, the last part of that preposition, it drops off, doesn't it? All right, now then, since I know that that is appa, well, I know the definition means from, doesn't it? Okay, now then, notice what you have here, our case. Do you recall studying and learning, as far as your Greek grammar is concerned, that appa goes with what case of a noun?
Genitive.
Genitive or
Ablative.
ablative. And in this particular case here, and it is with the ablative to be sure, but the genitive and ablative have the same form. Therefore, suppose I wanted to know the meaning of our case. Would I find our case in my Greek lexicon? No, I wouldn't. I would find it as our what?
Archaic.
Archaic. Why?
Because that's the root word.
No, that's the nominative.
Right.
That's the nominative. Okay, now then, let's take our lexicons, just by way of practice, and observe that as far as a definition is concerned, I go down the line until I find RK on page 62. Incidentally, Luke, you'll want to get one of these lexicons.
Yeah.
Now that's the Abbott and Smith, and it isn't exhaustive. Actually, that's a much better lexicon you got there. That's Thayer, because Thayer's is much more exhaustive, and when you get into more Greek, why, you're going to want a Thayer's because it's just more exhaustive and more helpful. Now, I have several different kinds of lexicons because lexicons are products that have been worked up by scholars, and I try to avail myself of all the help I can when I'm doing an exegetical study. I want to know precisely certain things, but there are certain lexicons that you have to be careful of, since they are man's product. For instance, let me give you an illustration while we're on that subject. There is a man, and you are well aware of his name, Bob Thiem, who, a fine Greek man, but he was an individual that was always trying to find something new. And his first years of ministry after he left the seminary down there were just most profitable. And a fine teacher, fine preacher. But then, by virtue of the bent of mind that he had, he thought he had something entirely new. And he wrote quite an article with reference to the matter of blood, haima. And I remember reading it, and he stated that there was a breakthrough in meaning by virtue of Arndt Gingrich years ago, German scholars that worked up a dictionary or a lexicon, and it didn't mean precisely what we think it means. It is a symbolic term for blood. Therefore, he came to the erroneous theological position that blood has no part in the efficacy for sin. And it wasn't the physical death of Christ that amounted to anything as far as caring for our sin, but it was what we call the spiritual death. And that was noted by virtue of the cloud. Darkness covered the earth, And it was at that time efficacy was being made by virtue of the spiritual separation of the Father from the Son. And the only thing that the physical did was the physical was just bearing witness to that. So he completely discounted the blood and went so far as to say that the blood of Christ, as far as taking care of sin, didn't take care of sin any more than the blood of anyone else that was shed. So you see immediately what happened. He got himself clear outside of the realm of biblical Christianity and got off on a heretical stand, and he got it by virtue of some of the things that Arndt and Gingrich mentioned in their lexicon. And so what I did, I wrote off and I got an Arndt and Gingrich lexicon. And sure enough, there's several different meanings there for hyma, for blood. And so, what did he do? He picked that meaning for blood that held to liberal theology. Now that's how far a guy can go sometimes if you have a bent of mind to just try to find something new or something different instead of sticking with the literal meaning of the Scriptures. So, having said that, there are dangers with reference to lexicons. Now I've used this for years and I like this as far as a workable dictionary in learning our Greek. All right? But you will probably want later on in your study a more elaborate Greek lexicon than the Abbott and Smith, which we have right here and use. Now then, observe, by virtue of RK, on page 62, as far as our lexicon is concerned, the basic meaning for RK is beginning or origin. See? Now then, let's come back to our text, our Greek New Testament text. And what have we got? What was from the beginning? See? What, or that which was from the beginning. See? So you have immediately, you've got the meaning of those four particular words and how to use your lexicon. Now let me state something else for you. If you still have your lexicons open there, page 62, to RK, observe what you have. As far as RK is concerned, it is followed by a little dash and then ace, right? And then followed by hey. That gives you the article and shows you that the genitive of RK is arcase, first declension noun. All right? Now look across the page, just as a illustration on page 63, archon, archon. Now then you have archon, and then you have the genitive, archontas, ha. Well, by giving you the genitive there, he's showing you that you have a third declension noun. Isn't that right? Oh, let's see here if we can look at some of the others here. Well, let's look up anthropos. That may be of help since we are more familiar with that word man, anthropos, than others. Anthropos. Anthropos on page 38. As far as our lexicon is concerned. Now you see, you have anthropos, and then you have the u, and then you have the ha. Okay? Immediately you know that you have a second declension noun, and it's masculine, with the article. And this will help you as you continue to observe these things right on down the line. Now then, in the beginning, in the front part of your lexicon, you are going to find certain abbreviations. Now, you're going to want to become familiar with these abbreviations because they are used throughout this particular lexicon. Now, as far as the front of my lexicon is concerned, it's found on page 10, list of abbreviations. Now, you'll see the abbreviations in the left-hand column and how those abbreviations equal or mean what is stated in the right hand. The only problem is some of those things are given to us in Latin, and therefore you have to also know what your Latin is. Well, sometimes I don't know what Latin is, so I have to do some guessing, or else I get a Latin dictionary, which I have down in my study, a little Latin dictionary, and it tells me what some of these meanings are. Now, he gives you some meanings periodically. For instance, go down in the left-hand column there, and you see the little C. C means cum. Cum. Well, that is the Latin for the English word with. See, meaning with. Now, I got introduced to that in college when I had a professor stating as to a party that graduated, and he had written on his degree there, cum laude. What does that mean? Cum laude. With honor. With honor. Graduated with honor. So, but that's Latin. Now, so there are some Latin words that you're going to find here. Okay, just turn back to your list of abbreviations or some of the other things, and you will find that you have a pretty good explanation. All right, now then.
About the appendixes, are you going
Okay.
to tell me a little bit about it?
Well,
In case they have.
that is a lexicon that what it is a crutch. Page 500, for instance. Page 500. A, ke, ko, a. There's the second perfect active of akuo. So as you are, I very seldom draw attention to that because the reason I don't is because I want you to know it. And I want you to be able to say, all right, now then I have to look up in my Greek lexicon this word because this happens to be a second perfect. But if you rely upon your crutch back here, why, before long, if you just have a crutch, then you can't walk too good. If you constantly use the crutch, unless you exercise your leg, well, you're going to always have to have a crutch. Now, you can get a crutch down at the bookstore. You can go down and buy one, but you better not. If I catch you using that crutch, I'm going to take it away from you. Because it is a lexicon that has every single form of the Greek New Testament written in it. Okay? Now then, I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm trying to do something for you. I'm trying to help you. Now, when you come to the third year, I don't care if you get a crutch. But I don't want you to have a crutch for 2 years. I want you to learn it. And if you've got a crutch, you're not going to learn it. It's a whole lot easier to go over to the bookcase and pull a book out. Isn't that right? Oh, this is what it is. Well, how do you know what it is? Have you been able to figure it out? Have you learned? And if you do not learn the rules of grammar, then you're constantly going to be crutching it through life by way of your Greek New Testament, and I don't want you to do that. Now, I've got a crutch, and I use that crutch. Because every once in a while, I really get stumped. I just really get stumped on a word. And I can't figure that thing out. And I'll study it out. And I'll work on it as best I can. And when I can't do it, well, then I go and I get that crutch and I look at it. But what I do is this. When I look and I find it in the crutch, I try to figure out why. Understand? So, therefore, that crutch is acting as a good lexicon for me. It isn't something, it just tells me that, as, oh, it's this. No. When I find that word, then I find what it comes from. How did he arrive at that? And in the beginning of that crutch, there are a number of paragraphs showing how things are arrived at such by virtue of the irregularities. And so it's a help in that way. But don't get a crutch for your first 2 years of Greek. I don't want you to have it. I want you to learn. All right, now this appendix, that's what this appendix is. It's showing you various forms which might be difficult for you to figure out. And I don't mind you using it on the condition that, all right, we'll try something here. I just saw something just in passing here. Turn to page 502 in your crutch there and go down the line. Genomenos. See that? That's right, go on over there. Genomenos. Do you find that? All right, now then, what does he say? It comes from ginomai. See, he's given you the ID there, which comes from ginomai. And he says it's a second aorist middle participle. See that? Second aorist middle masculine participle. All right, now look. How do you know it's second aorist?
Short and change stem.
Short and stem. Short and stem. Immediately, I know that it does come from ginomai, because I know in the aorist, ginomai is gen. I've learned that. But should I forget? Should I miss that? And I look that up. Immediately then, I look. I know that comes from ginomai. So I've got the thing cleared up, just in case I have a bit of a problem. So you may use that appendix, just so long as you don't abuse that appendix.
What's the ID for?
Identical.
Yeah. Okay. Because that, now then you, in order to find out that, turn over to your list of abbreviations. And the list of abbreviations on page 10, ID, is the same. See? The same. The same. Identical. All right? Now, that can be a very, very good tool for you. And you'll probably want to use that tool many, many times. So what I'm going to do for you for next Tuesday is this. Is I'm going to assign for you the first 4 verses of 1 John. First 4 verses of 1 John. Now then, do you know what I'm going to do? I'll give you a quiz on that. But I'm going to give you a quiz on 1 John 1 through 4 by my choosing the words for you to give me by way of, for instance, I'll say, give me the Greek word for I. For I. Like you see through? Well, you've got ophthalmos there, haven't you? Ophthalmos. Well, that means then you've got to write down on your paper ophthalmos. So I'm just going to keep working with you by way of vocabulary. But I'll take the vocabulary from these 4 verses, okay? And then we'll get on our next lesson next time. But I just want to introduce you. I want to introduce you to 1 John and a sign for you, 1 John 1 through 4. Now then, how do I do it? You may use whatever method you find helpful. But in the beginning, let me suggest something for you. That you write out your Greek first. Right? Write out your Greek. And then put your English down below it. All right? Now then, when you put your English down below it, then I want you to write it in sensible English. Okay? Not just make it an interlinear. And that's something else that is prohibited. Our interlinear Greek New Testaments. They aren't worth their salt. That's what the Jehovah's Witnesses just love to use on people. And they'll come up to you. Well, this is what the Greek states, and I'll read from the Greek, and they'll just read, in the beginning was the Word, and so forth. I was in a discussion with a Jehovah's Witness leader once. My wife and I were called over to a trailer house down here, and this Jehovah's Witness and his wife was called over because the folks in that trailer house wanted to have a debate between me and this Jehovah's Witness. Well, I tried to be as courteous as I could to him. And he was snapping back, and I was trying to witness and show them how to be saved and all this, and he was contradicting and so forth. And the discussion came up with reference to the Greek, and he had his diaglot. Well, I got a diaglot too. And so he said, well, this is what the Greek says. And he got it out. And I pulled my Greek New Testament out, just like you got there. And I said, all right, read that verse then from the Greek there. Read it. In the beginning was the Word. I said, read the Greek. In the beginning was the Word. I reached over and took his Greek New Testament away, and I said, read it from the Greek New Testament. He said, I can't. I said, you bet you can't. All you're trying to do is to snow these people stating, because you've got a Greek New Testament there, and you have an interlinear Greek New Testament, you're trying to parade to these people that you know the original language, and you're a false prophet, you're a hypocrite. Well, and he looked right there, and I went right down the line with him, and I really hit him hard. What a false prophet is and what's going to happen. And you know, he got just a little bit frightened over that. But don't you write in your Greek New Testaments. I've had students do it. Well, I had one student had practically an interlinear Greek New Testament. And so I'll be giving you exams now from the Greek New Testament. Isn't that interesting?
Every 5 lessons, quiz on vocabulary, then into the translation.
All right. Now, you may do it this way. Write it out if you want to do it in that manner. That's fine, beginning. But make sure that you put it down in your proper English grammar in light of what you've learned. Because you're going to have to explain to me what the case is, how you arrive at it, what's the subject, and etc. Okay?
What do we do about the imperfect? Or the perfect, I should say.
Well,
Get to words like that.
those 3 or 4 words there,
Smile.
you can't you know the meaning, and that's all you can do just by way of it means what we've heard, what we have seen. See?
So for a vocabulary test of it, we'll get
Oh,
it.
I wouldn't give you something you haven't had.
Oh, okay.
No, I won't give you something you haven't had. All right, I think it's going to get interesting for you now. We're going to be looking at our Greek New Testament for a little while, and then we'll get back to the various lessons in the grammar. But let's get started, get familiarize ourselves with the Greek New Testament, because I'm hoping that we're going to be able to read 1 John in the rest of the semester. Now that may be a little bit of a tall order for us, but nevertheless we're going to try it. Okay? Now then, in light of the little vocabulary quiz which we have just had, in making this sort of a review which we have learned, this is what we will do from here on out when I give you assignments in reading along with the assignment in the book. Why, I'll pick out various words that I am going to test you on by way of vocabulary, and this will, I believe, give you a good review. Now, take ophthalmos. I. There in the first verse. Ophthalmos. Ophthalmos. Okay. Let me just try to help you how to that's what we have, isn't it? Ophthalmos. Now, that case is what?
Locative, instrumental, or dative.
Yeah, one of those three, isn't it? Locative, instrumental, dative. Now then, when I ask for the vocabulary word I, you would write down ophthalmos. Now where is the accent? Where is the accent as far as the nominative is concerned? Can you tell?
Well, now we know it's on the ultima.
Why? Because your rule of accent is that the accent will tend to stay on the syllable throughout the entire declension. So I know by having this particular case in the text, I know my accent is on the ultima. See? Because that's ultima, isn't it? That's the ultima. Are you following?
That's as far as the second declensions.
Yeah, the second declension. And yet when the reason I'm doing this is because I want you to get used to being very careful with your Greek text. And this will cause you then to review your declensions. Now, it's very easy as far as your verbs are concerned, because the verb is simply a recessive accent. Now then, notice, well, you've got, our discussion was huios, wasn't it? Down in verse 3, kai meta tu huiou. Well, you have, and you know what case that is by virtue of the article. You know you've got either a genitive or ablative, tu huiou. All right, where's your accent? Your accent is on the ultima, isn't it? Therefore, when you write down your nominative, you know you have huios, and your accent then is on your ultima. See? Because that's where it is in the genitive. Koinonia, you have that, that's nominative. That's the word fellowship that we discussed. All right, now then, what I want you to do, since we have got a few irregular words there, I'm going to have you read the Greek and then translate it, and then I want you to ask questions, and I'm going to ask you questions. Now, as we begin, I don't mind you using your paper as you go along if you have to. All right. Now I'm going. Since you've had this before, Dwayne, why you take verse 1. I want you to read the Greek, and then I want you to translate it for me.
Ha in ap arches, ha ake ka amen, ha hero ka kamen.
That's right. Or
So you
rock.
could get that alpha in there. Tois aflamois humon,
Hang
hemon,
on.
ha ethesame sama, samatha, kai, hai keris, hemon, apsil, fesan, peri tu lagu, tes zoes.
All right. Now translate it.
Okay, what was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we will, that's a future, will or shall behold.
No, it's not.
No?
No.
Or okay, just an aorist, which we beheld,
All right.
and our hands have handled concerning the word of life.
All right. Now then, Wes, this is entirely new for you, and I imagine you had some problems here. Would you like to ask what your problems were? You have some difficulties there?
Yes and no.
Yes and no, huh?
Yeah.
Now then, do you see the case of tois ophthalmois, with our eyes? The reason he translated with our eyes is he's translating it by case there.
Mm-hmm.
What was from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have beheld, and our hands handled, they handled concerning the word of life. Now then, do you want to try number 2?
I can read it, but I won't be able to translate it.
You can't translate it?
No.
Now then, let me ask you, let me see if I can help you then. Why can't you translate it?
Because I didn't do it.
Oh, you didn't do it?
No.
How come you didn't do it?
Well, when it rains, it pours.
Oh, all right.
I can continue on if
Okay. Well, I think what we better do, we better not go on until you get it for tomorrow then, okay? Because it's not gonna do you an ounce of good for us to just go over something that you haven't done or that you just skipped over, eh? Because you need to know what you're doing, and if you get behind, well, it's just you can't catch up unless you really pour on. So for tomorrow, let's just simply have the same assignment then. Same assignment, and give you the opportunity to catch up on it. Now, I'm willing to do that, starting out, because I do want you to get a grasp of it. I do want you to get a hold of it, and you can. And it's and yet I realize this is the first time that you have had your Greek New Testament. He has had much advantage over you, having had quite a little bit more, but having to review, and he's getting hold of it now. So I want you to get a hold of that, and we'll just make this as another assignment. Go down through verse 2, 3, and 4, and then for tomorrow we will we won't have a quiz. We'll just devote our entire time to these three sentences, and I'll ask questions, and then I want you to be able to explain to me why you do this. Now, remember, get your subjects and translate translate by case. And when I say translate by case, is the same thing which I just mentioned on tois ophthalmos. See, what we have seen with. See, that's instrumental case, with our eyes. See, you wouldn't translate it. It wouldn't even make sense to translate what we have seen to our eyes, would it? That wouldn't make any sense at all. Or at our eyes, one being dative, the other being locative. So we have to know the function of those cases, and translation brings into practice the meaning of those cases. So when I say translate by case, I'm after the business of translating by the meaning of the case, which makes sense right here. Now, let's just take a look at the very last clause of that sentence, which he translated. Peri to lagou. Now, we have had the preposition peri, haven't we? And we know the preposition peri can go with the genitive. Now then, what case is tes zoes?
It's locative.
No, tes zoes. After to lagou. What case?
Oh, it's feminine genitive.
It's feminine genitive. Exactly right. Now you see, it is giving us a reference to what the word is. Isn't that right? Therefore, since it modifies, or since it is going to give to us a meaning, why, we can say of life, can't we? Concerning the word tes zoes, of life. Understand? Because you take the genitive. to lagu goes with the preposition peri, concerning the word what? Of life. See? Okay, it describes the word. And you were right to say it's a feminine genitive, because how do you know it's feminine?
Well, by the article.
By the article and also by the word. You see, it has the feminine article in it. So your article is your best friend. It is when you come to a word that doesn't have the article, that is when you have difficulty of trying to tell me what case it is. Now I'll give you an illustration. Look down in verse 3. You have hena kai humes koinonia. Now then, see, there isn't any article with that word, is there? Koinonia. There isn't any article at all. Could you venture a guess to me as to what case that might be? Now, I don't think probably you could, because you haven't done it. All right, now then, you tell me what case it is then, Dwayne.
Accusative?
Why is it accusative?
Well, it's got the accusative ending on, but it's also, well, just looking at the function, it's the indirect object,
Not
or
indirect.
the direct object of ekete.
All right, now then, you can tell me it's accusative because of two reasons that you have learned thus far. Number one, you can tell me it's accusative because of form, and number two, you can tell me it's accusative by virtue of function. Did you follow that, Wes?
Mm-hmm.
See, you know it's accusative by virtue of its form, and then you know it's accusative because it's the direct object of the verb ek. All right, boys. Finish off your translation then. You do your translation, Wes, and we'll take up with us then tomorrow. Okay? Fine and dandy. All right. Take your Greek New Testament and let's see how we can get along this morning. Now, Dwayne took number one. You want to try number two then? Now, what we want to practice doing, and I don't want you to get embarrassed or anything like that, because we're learning, we're starting. And I don't care how much difficulty you may have by way of pronunciation. Let's try it. Let's do it. Because it's been something that I have regretted all my life, that all the way through college and all the way through seminary, in every single one of my Greek classes, I was never, ever, ever required to pronounce the Greek. And I find it a hindrance even today, after all of these years. So if I can get you started just in pronunciation, in reading the Greek, I think that you will benefit from that just a little bit later. In fact, I have found already, as far as our 3 years in teaching Greek, that it has been I'm quite encouraged with the way that each one is able to read it. So don't feel bad if you have to go slow. That's what I want you to do, is to just see if you can pronounce them by virtue of syllabalization and so forth. Okay?
Kai, He, Zoe, Ephan, Erothe,
All right. Ephane rothe. Ephane rothe. That's fine. Great.
Kai, Eora, Kamen,
All right. He. See, that's a rough
Okay.
breathing. See, that's a rough breathing. That's all right. Now, sometimes the print isn't too good, and you'll find it a little difficult. But once you get familiar with some of these words that you know will be sort of a rough breathing mark type of word, why you'll get onto it. So that's he'orakamen.
Erakamen, Kai, Marturi, Umen,
Marturumen.
Marturumen,
Okay.
Kai, Apangalamen,
Okay. Apangalamen.
Apangalamen,
Mhm.
Umen, Tame, Zoane, Tame, Ionion,
Good. Fine.
Hitis,
Hatis.
Tis, Hain, Proston, Pater, Patra,
Patera.
Kai, F N Erothe,
Ephane rothe.
Ephan Erothe, Amen.
Okay. Now, what we will get used to doing in the continuation of our reading out loud is we'll begin to put all of the syllables together, like fan, rothe. Ephane rothe. See, ephane rothe. Now let me just give you an illustration of for a little bit of encouragement. I at one time had a lady, a married lady, that was taking Greek, and she was quite a fine Greek student too, incidentally. And one day they were having some repairs done to their house, and the lady was talking to one of the carpenters there, and she discovered that he was his background was Greek, had a Greek background. And so she inquired, and could you read Greek? Oh yes. He said, I came from Greece. And she said, well, look, I have got a Greek New Testament. And she explained to him that she had been taking Greek. And I wonder if you would just read for me just a little of this. Why, sure. So he took her Greek New Testament, and he just read it just like we would read English. And she said, my, it was just beautiful how he would read that Greek. And so, and now I don't expect that we will get to the place where we can call our reading very beautiful. But nevertheless, we can keep trying. Okay, fine. Now can you translate it?
I'm going to use my sheet.
Huh?
I'm going to use my sheet.
Yeah, you can use your sheet for the time being here.
And the life was manifested, and we have seen and testify and declare to you eternal life. I had a question about this one already, but which thing was to the Father and was manifested to us?
All right, fine. Now then, let me ask you a few questions with your Greek New Testament open there now. You can recognize Kai as being a conjunction. We'll just call this a coordinating conjunction for the time being. That it's and, right? Now then, what case is Hazoe?
It's the nominative.
It's nominative. All right, now then, incidentally, what kind of gender is it?
Feminine.
Feminine, you know it's a feminine nominative by virtue of the form, isn't that right? And your article helps you out. Now then, when you have a nominative form like you do here, all right, then you're going to get suspicious that this is probably to be used in what manner?
As the subject.
As the subject of the sentence. All right, now then, the next word that you see in that particular, on that particular line is ephanerothe. Now, when you come to that word, what do you note?
What do I know?
Yeah, what do you
Well,
see?
then I know it's a verb.
You know it's a verb. Now then, can you tell me what kind of a verb, what tense of a verb it would be?
First aorist.
All right, now why is it a first aorist?
Because of the form.
Yes, the form, but explain some of the things about the form which show for me that it is a first aorist.
Because it is the augment.
All right, first of all, I see an augment. Therefore, immediately, when I say it's an augment, then I know that the basic word is phane ra'o, don't I? I know that's, if I were to look that up in my lexicon, I would have to look up phane ra'o, wouldn't I? Not phane, because that augment does not occur as far as the Greek lexicon is concerned. Now then, something else that I'll need you to tell me as far as being a first aorist.
Well, just being a first aorist, it's also, I don't want to term this, but the vowel changes to a long form.
All right, and that would be because it's a contract verb, isn't that right? Now then, what does the theta tell you?
The theta tells you it's in the passive.
Theta tells you that's in a passive voice. And as far as the form is concerned, the they tells you it is the third person singular. Now then, would you parse that verb for me?
Third person singular. First aorist, indicative passive. Phane ra'o, I make manifest.
All right, very good. Third person singular. First aorist, passive indicative of the verb phane ra'o, I manifest. All right, that's good. Now then, you see, being a third person, you have the rule of concord, don't you, with he zoe, and the life was manifested. All right, very good. Now then, what is the next word?
Kai again.
Kai again, which is and. Now then, you haven't had that particular word, so we're going to go on and skip that. But you have had mar to rumen. All right, now then, parse that verb for me.
I remember. When I looked it up, we haven't taken the present yet.
Well, you've taken the present.
Oh, yes,
Present
we have. I'm thinking of the perfect. Yeah.
No,
okay.
this is not a perfect.
No. Yeah, okay. It's, but we haven't taken this thing. I look ahead in the lessons for the umen or whatever. The before umen. Liquid stem or whatever. Anyways, I'll
Well, now
parse
wait
it.
a minute. This is not a liquid stem. What did you... All right, okay, hang in there now. Hang in there. I want you to parse it for me.
Okay, it's a third person plural.
No. And put it on the board here.
First person.
All right now. Here we go.
Happens all the time.
Martu, Ru, man. Isn't that what you've got?
Yes.
All right, now then. The verb is what? Mar, to,
For you.
no,
Ow.
mar to,
It's just an upsilon.
martureto, isn't it? Therefore, that's what you call a contract verb. You've had contracts, haven't you?
Yes.
All right. Now then, by this form, you know what form that is. You just got mixed up a little bit. What is it again? Parse it for me now.
Okay, so it's a first person singular.
First person singular. Tense?
No, that's
Okay.
not right.
Huh?
It's plural.
I'm sorry. First person plural.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right, man. Okay, I'm getting all mixed up like that. Okay, first person plural, present indicative,
Present. Indicative.
active,
Active. Of. Martureo.
martureo.
Which means.
Testify.
Testify
Or
or
bear
bear witness. All right, now then, why do we have the ooh?
You have the oo because it's
So you just keep thinking there. You're doing all right.
you have to add an and you take off the omega,
Take that off, don't you?
right?
Now you add
And almond,
almond. Okay? And when you have epsilon and omicron, they contract to what?
well, they would, I don't know, it would go up, but I don't remember learning that.
Yeah.
See, all I remember is changing them, not
Haven't we had
No, the
that?
EO and all the contracts are 3-4 lessons away yet.
Oh,
The EO and
surely not.
yeah, the epsilon, alpha, and omicron contracts.
Those contract, we haven't had contracts yet?
No, I think they're 3 lessons away.
Well, let's just take a look. I was of the impression that we had some contracts here.
See, the EO is oh, actually it's 49 or 59, 49.
yeah, 49, page 175.
And then you've got your alpha contracts and your omicron contracts. A little while after. Or something like that. Uh-oh.
All right, my mistake. What we have had is we've had the epsilon, alpha, and omicron with the futures, right? All right. They are still contracts, but I mean, in the sense that there's contraction. But you haven't had that. All right. I'll back off on that. So, but this is what happens anyway. The epsilon, the omicron contract to make an upsilon. Upsilon. All right, fine. Now then, it being a present tense, the previous word is perfect. Now then, this being a present tense, you translate it just right. And we are testifying. And now then, what is apangelamen?
You want me to parse it?
Yes.
Okay, it's first person plural,
Yes.
present, indicative, active,
Present, indicative, active. Okay.
of apangelo,
All right. Apangelo.
apangelo,
Okay. And that would be translated, and we are testifying and announcing. Isn't that the meaning of apangelamen?
declare or announce.
Announce or declaring. Now, what case is whom in?
Umin is locative to dative.
Locative, instrumental, or dative? Locative, instrumental, or dative. Isn't it? Now, what part of speech is it? You know what I mean when I ask for what part of speech?
Its function,
What kind of a word is it?
like a prepositional phrase,
No.
like a phrase or.
What do you mean, whom in?
Whom in? What part of speech is whom in?
It's a pronoun.
Excuse me. What kind of a pronoun?
Or a relative.
No, that would be who or which.
I'm guessing.
All right. You translate it, announce to you. That's a personal pronoun.
Personal pronoun.
Personal pronoun. All right. Now let's sink this thing down by way of case as far as its usage is concerned. We're announcing, and you translated it right, we're announcing to you. So what would that make it?
Data.
It'd make it a dative, make it indirect object, wouldn't it? We're announcing to you. What now? What case is tain zoein?
Tain is accusative.
All right, tain zoein is accusative. Now then, what function does it have in the sentence?
It acts as the direct object.
The direct object of the verb, isn't that right? Therefore, it is in the accusative case. Now then, look. You have exactly the same word by definition that starts the sentence, isn't that right? The life was manifested. See? And here you have the life as the direct object. So you see how important case is? If you have nominative, it's going to be the subject of the sentence. If you have accusative, it's going to be the object in the sentence. So when I ask you to translate by case, I'm asking you to translate by the function of that case in the sentence. See that? The subject, life. Tain zoein, object of the verb, we announce to you, life. See? All right, fine. Now then, what kind of a word is ionion?
It's an adjective.
It's an adjective. All right, now then, what does this word modify?
It modifies zoein
How can you tell?
because it's in the attributive position followed by an article.
All right, it's an attributive adjective, and the article is feminine,
It's feminine accusative.
feminine accusative, telling you that it cannot refer to any other word in the sentence. It has to refer back to a word that's in the accusative. It has to refer back to a word that's feminine in gender. Isn't that right? And since it refers, as you know, to zoein, that little article helps us out tremendously because it tells me what kind of an adjective ionion is. And you had it exactly right. It is an attributive adjective because an attributive adjective is an adjective that follows the article. Right? All right, we announce to you what? We announce to you the object. We announce to you eternal life. See? We announce to you the eternal life. Now see how simple that is, and boy, how precise we can be with all the dogmatism that the scriptures have when we can see that these forms demand that we translate it in a certain way. So I can't take any liberties at all as far as this kind of a statement is concerned. I know precisely by virtue of the cases, the rules of Greek grammar, that the nominative is the subject, the accusative is the object. Why, I'm hemmed in, isn't that right, into an exact, precise way to translate a sentence. Now that's wonderful, isn't it? Because you have such great assurance. For me, English is a little bit difficult because I don't see any forms in English. those English words. Well, you take. Let's just use Zoe. Zoe is spelled L-I-F-E, isn't that right? Mm-hmm. Zone is spelled L-I-F-E, isn't that right? There isn't any difference between form, is there? When it comes to the English, it's all spelled L-I-F-E. Ah, but not in Greek. The Greek is spelled Zeta Omega Eta. The life. Now then, zeta, omega, eta, nun. Well, it's different spelling, isn't it? Got different forms. Therefore, I know, by virtue of the form, how to translate. So you can come to the Greek, and you can be so encouraged that you know precisely how the Spirit of God wants you to understand and to translate. Okay, now then, you haven't had, yes, you have had hatis. Now, what is that?
Oh, hatus.
It's got two things jammed together there.
The hay is. I can't think of the last. Perfect.
The hay is the relative,
Yeah, relative.
and the tis is,
Indefinite.
okay, now you've got two pronouns put together, haven't you? You got an indefinite and you got a relative. So we call this an indefinite relative. See? Now then, could you tell me, by virtue of this form, what it refers to?
To life.
It refers to life. Why?
Because tis.
No, not tis, but
Well, the hay is just usually which or what.
yeah, but the form. What kind of a form we got here?
Oh, feminine.
Feminine, absolutely so. You see, this zoane here, as far as being the object of the sentence there, I won't put the article there, but we just add this hey tis. Now, well, maybe I better put out the so that will help us see. Now, I know that's feminine, and I know that's feminine, and they have to agree. The article always agrees with the gender and the case and the number of the noun it's used with. Now then, I've got an indefinite relative. Now, it, in its modification, must agree in gender with the noun that it modifies. Therefore, I know that is a feminine indefinite because it's got the feminine form. Isn't that right? So, here, I just get right over there just like that. And it's just as simple as can be, yes.
Doesn't it also agree with number too?
Yes, it does. But not, we have noticed by virtue of the study of the relative, it doesn't necessarily have to agree in case. Remember that?
Okay.
Doesn't have to, because there can be attraction or non-attraction and so forth like that. But it does have to agree in gender and number. Okay. Now then, since this modifies life, all right, you translated it right. Which? But it's referring to what in the sentence? Which life? See? Which life?
I put which thing
No.
because I was trying to get both in early.
Yeah, well, sometimes you will translate it in that manner. But in this case here, you know you can't make it thing because of its antecedent. Which life, see? So, but you don't say life because that's redundancy. Which, now then, in this sentence, in its use, what case is it?
It's a nominative.
Nominative. Now then, how is it functioning in its own clause? See, look here in your text here. How is it functioning in its own clause here? is the next word?
It's was, which is aim, which is an Amy.
That's right. Parse it for me.
It's a third person singular.
Good.
Perfect. Indicative
Imperfect, indicative
of aim.
of Amy. All right. Now then, which was. Therefore, it's acting as the,
Subject.
that's acting as the subject, isn't it? Which was. It was. Which was. See? Which was. Now then, you have you had pros?
Yes, we have.
That is a preposition, isn't it? And here it's used with the accusative here. Okay, which was, and the meaning of pros is what?
With the accusative either takes to or toward.
And often translated before. See, to or toward, that's before, isn't it? Now you'll get on to that.
Before?
Yeah. Or which was before the Father.
How do you get before?
Well,
Like I see toward as movement.
yeah, but
To or,
it is in a position.
also in a position.
Yeah, position of direction. And there's another little preposition. I guess you've had pro. Yeah, that means before also. And one of my students just had the terriblest time to distinguish between pros and pro. Let me take just a moment to give you the difference between pros and pro. And I'll see if I can illustrate that difference. And if you look them up, if you look them up, why this is to, towards, near, before, all kinds of definitions. This can be the same. Now then, let's use the word before for each one of them, just for the sake of illustration here. Now, this word before looks at they can be almost synonyms, but there is also something that differentiates them. This can look at before in relationship to time, and this can look at before in relationship to place. See that? Now, for instance, in Ephesians 2:10, for we, and we dealt with this, or we just referred to this in our spiritual life class. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God prepared, literally, which God prepared beforehand. And the reason I know beforehand is because he uses pra as that preposition that's associated with that verb, which God prepared beforehand. That looked at time, isn't that right? That was before in the sense of time, when God preached the gospel beforehand. All right, now then, this looks at place, just as we have right here. Which life was before the Father, was in the presence of the Father, in other words, was to or towards or near. And you remember, an easy way to remember this is the first part of one of the Greek words that we've learned already, prosopon, which means what? Face. Face. Prosopon means face. So when you're face to face, it's prosopon, 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 prosopon. Not pra-pon, but it's prosopon. So this can look at time, this can look at place. However, again, I must state it, that they can be synonyms together. Okay? But note that these synonyms do have and are used in those two ways among many. All right, now then. in this case here, which was before, now, ton patera. Could you tell me the case of patera?
Case,
Mhm.
it's accusative.
How can you be sure it's accusative?
Well, just the form of it and the article.
The article is the sledgehammer, isn't it? Yeah, suppose I'd forgotten the case of patera. As I worked through my declensions, I'd forgotten that declension, you see. I'd forgotten it. But if I've got an article, well, I know precisely what case it is then. Because the article always must agree with the noun that it goes with in case, as well as number and gender. All right, now then. All right, we have got ephani rothe again, haven't we? We've already had that in the first part of the sentence. Now then, once again, we've got hamen. Now, for the sake of practice, what part of speech is that?
I just has to go through my mind. What do you mean by part of speech?
Yeah. It's a indirect object. That's the function. The part of speech is what kind of a word it is in it is a personal
I
pronoun.
get these definitions down in my mind.
Yeah, all right now.
It's a personal pronoun.
Yes, personal pronoun. Now, you know, you're telling me just exactly what kids have told me all the way down through the years, and that is this. You do not learn English in high school. You just do not. Well, join the crowd. Neither did I. Absolutely not. Why? English grammar? Man, 3:30 I can go out for football. English grammar could stay right there at that desk. But the sad thing about it is this, that it isn't even taught hardly. Did you have an English grammar course in high school?
No. Our teacher in grade 13 saw our need and she tried to do it, but it was too late. We were too far gone.
Today they have to take 5 English courses within the 4 years.
They
Made
do.
it compulsory this year.
Well, isn't it grand? But of course, those brilliant educators, you know, who needs English grammar? Well, I guess maybe those brilliant people finally decided to wake up. But that's great. Now, but this, huh?
Too late for us.
Too late for you. So you're going to have to sweat it out here. But let me tell you something that I hope will be an encouragement to you. And I've told it to every single class I've had, probably. And that is this. I couldn't tell you someone, I took Greek under Dr. Rary, and you know, he'd say, now, I want you to tell me what the predicate is. Nothing go my hand like that. And I said, what's the predicate, Dr. Rary? And he'd stand up there and shake his head. And he said, now then I want you to tell me what preposition is. Nothing go my hand like that. What's a preposition, Dr. Rary? And you know what he did to me one day? He got tired of that hand that's flopping up and down like that. And he looked back there and he says, Al, this is Greek. We don't have time to teach you English. I just wanted to bust him and his baby nose so flat. Of course, that was when I was just straight off the mountain. And the old nature was a lot closer to the surface than it is now, thankfully. But, you know what happened? We'd go home. And Lila would teach me what it meant to have a subject, what the predicate was, what the object was. Those were totally foreign words, and when they asked what the object was, I didn't know what brand of oatmeal they were talking about at all. Totally foreign. Absolutely. But now I'll tell you something. Since I've learned my English from my Greek, I can take a Greek sentence and tear that thing apart. You put an English sentence from me, and you know what I'll do? I see my wife. Yeah, and we have some good times. And just the other day, with our Greek class over the house. And when the kids were gone, she came through the room and she just kind of laughed. And I looked at her and I knew good and well she just hadn't swallowed a chipmunk. But I knew that I was going to be the blunt of something just by the way she looked. And I said, all right, what are you laughing about? She's, I'm just laughing at your grammar. And I said, yeah, I remember those days too. You can learn. If I can learn it, I know you can, because you guys are far smarter than I ever was in my life. So here is a part of speech called a personal pronoun. And again, what case is this personal pronoun in?
The dative.
The dative. Why dative?
Indirect object.
Indirect object, absolutely. If we can learn those things right now in the beginning of our first year Greek, you know, you'll be so much further ahead the next 2 years when we get into syntax. All right. How are we coming along as far as our video is concerned there?
We have 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes? All right, young man, you take verse 3 there now.
Ha het ora kamen kai ake ka amen upon galamen kai humin hina kai humis koinonia neon ekete ekete meth hemon kai he koinonia de he hematera meta tu patros kai meta tu huiu autu Jesu Christu.
All right, fine and dandy. That's good there.
What we have seen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, what we have seen and heard, we declare. We declare also to you, in order that we also,
No,
you also,
that's humes, isn't it?
yeah, you also, might have fellowship with us, and the that's a post-positive thing. And
Well, yeah, but it's has to be translated in a different way. You have kai there.
and
All right.
our fellowship.
Now what you gonna make de?
Well, if our fellowship.
No, it's not an interrogative. And
Okay.
if our fellowship indeed,
Indeed.
yeah, make that indeed.
Okay. Well, where are you supplying the if? Are you just supplying an if then?
Huh?
Well, you're putting if in a different place, and if our fellowship indeed.
No, I wouldn't put if there.
Okay.
And
well,
our fellowship indeed.
okay. Is with the Father and with His Son Jesus Christ.
Okay. Now you see you had to supply the verb to be, didn't you? And our fellowship indeed is with the Father and with His Son, Jesus Christ. All right, now then, I want to ask you some questions here. Parse for me, ek ete.
It's third or second person plural, present subjunctive of Amy,
Present subjunctive, voice.
or present subjunctive of Echo. I have. Sorry.
Voice,
Active.
okay. Second person plural. Present active subjunctive of echo, I have. All right, what case is koinonion?
Accusative.
Function,
It's the direct object.
the direct object of,
Of humes.
no,
Or no. And we have eket, eta.
direct object of the verb, ekate.
Okay.
All right, now then, all of you take a look. See henna? Both of you see henna there? All right, now then, when you have henna, get suspicious. The verb that follows is usually in what mode?
The subjunctive.
Subjunctive mode, and that's exactly what you've got here. In order that you also might have fellowship with us. And our fellowship indeed is with the Father and with His Son, Jesus Christ.
There's a clock have
Okay,
a
question.
question, sir.
All right, fine.
I translated kai, I kept it as an, and I put it before the henna. I put it and that instead of translating it also. So
Which Kai are you talking about, Dwight? I mean,
actually, the one for this henna statement that we were just talking about, but also the rest, I always put and that you may have fellowship with us.
that really isn't wrong. But I want to get you to do something. And that is get used to translating henna as in order that. The word that isn't wrong. But as we've stated before, the term that we've understood to be a demonstrative pronoun, isn't that right? Now, this is not a pronoun. It is a conjunction. And it can be translated as that, and often is. But what I'd like for you to do for a while, anyway, is to translate it in order that. And so when you make it in order that, you almost have to translate the kai also. See? In order that, you also. All right, any other question there? This is what I want you to do. I want you, yes, okay, fine.
One other one was first part of the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you wanted to say who yesterday we were talking about?
No, I think it was somewhere else. But I put oh no, I can't figure where I got it from. Oh yeah, okay. I put that. Would it matter if you put that or what?
Well, again, let's sort of reserve that as demonstrative. Because, and what you have is what? What do you have here? What part of speech do you have is as ha here?
Part of, oh, it's the subject.
Part of speech.
Sorry.
That's all right.
It's a pronoun.
Relative pronoun. Relative pronoun. And try to keep the relatives for a while as who or which, such as that, eh?
Or what?
Or what, yeah. Try to do that, would you? And let's, if not, we are apt to get just a little bit sloppy by way of our definitions. And that's what first year Greek is about. Now next year, you're going to say, well, you told me not to do it this way, but I'm telling you to do it this way this year so that you can differentiate, see? Because here we've got two words, haven't we, that you've translated as that. You've got a relative pronoun, you've got a conjunction, haven't you? But in neither one of the cases do you have a demonstrative. See? And a demonstrative pronoun is an entirely different kind of a pronoun than a relative pronoun, and different between a conjunction. All right, but now that's the reason for these classes. Questions keep popping because others may have very similar questions. Anything else?
Could you just read through the translation one more time, please? I think there was another area, but I
what we have seen and what we've heard. Now you see you add the what there to that because it's acting as the subject of the verb. What we have seen, what we have heard, we are announcing also to you, in order that you also might have fellowship with us. And our fellowship indeed is with the Father and with His Son, Jesus Christ.
Okay, the one area was, and well, you put, and we are announcing to you.
Yes.
I put we declare.
That doesn't make any difference.
Okay, and the last one was, I chopped it off. It put what we have seen and have heard, instead of putting what we heard.
That's all right. What we've seen and
Have heard.
heard. That's right. Because it's a compound sentence, isn't it? Connect with Kai there, because you've got your two verbs. But since they're so close together and jammed together, that's all right with me. Okay? All right, anything else? Okay, fine or dead. And we'll just stick with this for a little bit, okay?